Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, wherever you are joining us in the world. This is Tipping Point, and I am your host, Andrew Potkowitz. We gather here weekly to meet with industry leaders and luminaries to discuss a variety of different technological topics, and along the way, hope to have a little fun and learn a lot as we go. I am really excited today to welcome Vaibhav Tare here, who is the Chief Information Security Officer of Fulcrum Digital and recognized as one of the top 200 startup CSOs in the industry. Welcome, Vaibhav.
Thank you.
We are, as you know, live out across Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So for folks out there in the audience who have any questions or comments along the way, please feel free and do jump in and ask those questions and make those comments, and we will get to them along the way. So welcome, Vaibhav. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good.
I know you've recently resettled in Florida.
I am, yes.
How's the weather down there?
Oh, weather is pretty nice.
How does it compare to I think where you were last, which was in Pune?
Yeah, Pune and in a couple of days in New Jersey. But
Okay.
it's compared to Pune and New Jersey, it's pretty good here. You know, it's pretty refreshing all the time. So yeah, I
Well,
love the weather. Yeah,
it's certainly warm year round there. So
yeah.
yeah, I want to dig into so many topics today. You are a unique guest that we've had here in the information security and cybersecurity and data protection space. And this seems to be a topic that is widely discussed, but at a very superficial level, and everyone understands and knows at a high level that there's a lot to protect out there on the web and through infrastructure and data. So I want to pick your brain today and understand a bit more what that looks like. But I know you've been in this space for 27 plus years. Can you give us a little bit of background of what your professional journey has been? And apologies along the way. I do have two dogs here with me. They may be disruptive today, so I may have to let them out at some point. But for now, I'll turn it over to you. So tell us a bit about your background.
Okay, thanks. And thanks for having me today. So yeah, I mean, I've been in the industry for around 30 years now. Close to 30 years now. And when I started, in 1990s, it was, at starting of the computers, right? So I spent a couple of years managing and maintaining data centers, cloud and infrastructure. Uh, for a couple of years managing the and migrations of the data centers, maintaining the security of the data centers. Uh, my whole, the objective is to efficiently manage and maintain the IT infrastructure, which is a core infrastructure for businesses, where we have a couple of, uh, you know, technology areas where, for your from not a data center. I mean, it's not only a data center means hardware devices, but there are multiple layer of the technologies, right? So I've been interested in initially for computer systems, but I got exposure to moving into the data center management, migrations, and then later and after 2000, uh, when the AWS and Azure started implementing their cloud infrastructure services, right? And that time, we used to have only a physical data center. So after that, AWS and Azure implemented their cloud infrastructure, their services for across the world. We got into it, and after that, I moved into the security services, where for all these areas, everything is going on a cloud, but it has to be secure, right? Yeah. It's not a physical security now, but it's a virtual security you need. So that's how I started working on the cyber security also. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty interesting area to keep me busy all the day. Um,
I
you're right.
I, I imagine when you do watch television or movies that involve hacking and cybersecurity, you must roll your eyes frequently and say to yourself, "That's not realistic. That's not how it really works." But when I look back to, when I started in this space, which is certainly pales in comparison to your experience, you know, the provider I was with, we had done, like many folks in the systems integration and agency space, digital agency space, did a lot of our own hosting. And I recall, our CTO then thinking back to the late 90s when they started doing these data centers, and just the sheer expense of the hardware, to do that hosting. And then, as those various co-locations started to sort of dwindle because folks are moving to sort of these more commoditized, large scale cloud infrastructures, um, I'm curious what cybersecurity involved then versus what it involves now. And I imagine the manyfold additional risks and threats there are out there. If we can start at maybe a top level, when we talk about information security and cybersecurity, what's sort of the jumping off point to understand what we are protecting against?
So let's go back from the basic, right? When
Okay.
we started journey to hosting the servers and infrastructure on premise uh, back in 1990, and from there we moved from hosting the servers and infrastructure on premise to the co-locations. So uh, so it's all part of the journey where you started hosting your for your all your businesses, or you started hosting your servers infrastructure. That is your physical security. Your users are accessing on-premise infrastructure only. The internet reach was not that much that time. And then in couple of years, to managing a physical infrastructure in-house was like overhead for the organizations, which got moved a little bit to shifting from managing yourself to somebody should manage your infrastructure, or you host somewhere, right? That is your co-location, and that craze started in early 2000 to move everything to the co-location, don't manage this thing. And then security also come into picture. The application got developed, the build, the reach of the internet got spread across the user base. The businesses started coming into different locations. So that's how the journey started. And from there, your co-location, in later part of the 2000, it got moved into the cloud introduced. And then, major business or big businesses started moving their workload to the cloud. Now, when they started moving to the cloud, then your cybersecurity is really coming to picture, to where you know you don't have anything in your house right now. Everything is on the cloud, right? And you don't know whether that access or architecture is sufficiently enough protected to make sure that the only required resources are getting access to it. And
Oh, I'm sorry, Vibe. So just to simplify it for me, we're talking about the origin was an on-prem, a literal on-prem solution where there was a physical server in your home or in your office. This maybe even predates internet access, but you had applications that you ran on your local machine, and you had your local server. As the internet grew, and there was, if it was still a physical on-prem, literal on-prem device, or server, it was harder to access because someone had to specifically know how to get to that location. And then once they sort of moved to these co-location facilities where it was still on-prem but not in your physical building, it was in sort of a local facility, there were more shared servers and more shared applications that enabled more traffic to get to a wider variety of applications. And now that a lot of the stuff is moving to sort of cloud hosted, there's even more penetration and more ability for folks to search for these particular targets that they're trying to access. Yes.
yeah, so that's how it's got started. So,
Okay.
and then your cybersecurity word basically got term in early 2000, but it was not that much popular. But you know To answer your question, to differentiate between the information security and the cyber security, information security is nothing but you have a control in place, right? Um, um, so let's say for your whatever you have infrastructure, whether you have a right kind of controls established, your policies and your procedures are established properly to make sure that the who are the users are following the process, not to get for example, your password should be 12 characters. That's the control, right? And the uh, process is to the procedure is to you have a 12 character with certain numbers and certain special character, right? And then your procedure is to change that password every after 90 days. So that's the control established, right? So it is called, basically it comes under, you refer as information security process controls, right? Cybersecurity is overall your organizational, uh, you know, architecture protection. So it includes your applications, your data centers, your employee data, your PII data, personal identifiable data. We especially refer for the your personal identified data for the financial services, your PHI data, which is for hospitals, and your health organization use is patient information, right? Patient critical information. So that comes under the PHI data. So all these overall comes under your, cyber security. It's so basically make it very easy. Information security is you have controls establishment. Cyber security is a complete set of the security posture. So that's how the pretty simple term is, to not to get confused between
I know
the
that it's helpful. I think this is an area that's, if you are not well educated in this space, becomes sort of a quagmire of various terms, and it's a scary, it's a scary world, and there's a lot of threats out there. So I think understanding what these various terms mean is certainly helpful. You noted the sort of at its base, password protection and password protocol is sort of, it's sort of information security 101. I also imagine that's probably the biggest risk and threat there is out there, that these protocols, people have a hard time finding their way to changing their passwords every 90 days. And I imagine that's a pretty big threat across organizations.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So it all depends on, see. So that's how the overall standards got developed. Now, in cybersecurity, the one area where you start implementing the various levels from your applications to down to your physical security. That is also comes under your part of the cybersecurity, where you have a access control. So when you enter into the building, your turnstile is there, right? You swipe the card and then you get into it, and then your access log is getting recorded from your application security. What do you access for your browser security? It's all comes under the various forms and tools. But for other one, for information security, so to control this flow of information and know what's going on, there are several standards over the period of time got developed. From, let's say, for ISO 27001, which is an ISMS system. For ISO has built it. There is a privacy information management system, which is a ISO 27701 got developed. So how to protect the privacy information. For then there is a set of different body, which is a HIPAA and HITRUST in US, which has developed special controls for whoever is working in the health health field or health domain. They have to follow the certain rules and regulations to protect the patient information, right? So these are the security controls. If you are putting something on the internet or the applications, you have to follow certain rules based on the that standards, which is called the HIPAA standards, right?
Yeah.
Similar thing is like GDPR. I think everybody knows the GDPR, that vastly known GDPR. Europe GDPR is different than the UK GDPR, but there is a similar way that we call in US as the CCPA for California Consumer Protection Act, right? Which is also a more or less similar copy to GDPR, but it's not entirely. But some of the controls are similar to protect the consumer information, right? So these controls got established and mandated in some way to protect the information, which comes under the Information Security Act. And these are some of the regulations, some of the standards. The GDPR, it's it's not ISO, it's a standard. So there is a difference between the various one, but it's not hard to understand when you start putting the things together. So okay, I need to go into the cyber security. So where should I start? Whether it is a technical, non-technical, there are various areas are there. You need to understand the technicality, and then go from there. But more or less, there are a lot of areas where you can go and look, and the product they start protecting the information. Right? Basically, it's all the data protection. Protect yourself. That's it. Protect
and,
yourself.
and all that background is very helpful. And I think, the various ISO protocols and the various data protection, international or, geographical policies in place to police how organizations retain and manage the information they have about you, that PII is rapidly changing. I'm curious, as you have conversations with institutions, and I think everyone recognizes that cybersecurity and information security and data protection are important. I think no one would deny that. But I imagine that there are some obstacles to overcome, and some challenges within organizations, whether it's siloed data or cultural change management, or budget. I imagine that the impetus for some of these initiatives might be some of these very high profile breaches that we've seen over the years out there in the market, whether it's the Home Depot or Target. And I think the reality is that people need to recognize that if organizations like that are able to get hacked, then everyone's at risk. So I guess it's a statement and a question, which is, it's imperative that folks approach this thoughtfully and practically. But where do they start? And what are the challenges that you've seen out there with getting organizations to sort of bring these protocols into place and roll them out?
Oh, I think it's it's not. I would not say it's not a lack of awareness. A lot of organizations spend large amount of budget on the protecting the information of the individual information and the organizational data. And so this is the period that we are evolving as a technology centric uh, you know um, technology centric we are going through the technology centric area. So it's right now it is evolving. We still have long way to go in cyber security. There are quantum computing, IoT, and there are a lot of new areas every time. Now there is a new challenge like AI and chat GPT, and all these things are coming into machine learning. So it is still evolving process, but I would say organization are spending, having protecting the information. They have a plan, couple of, but I would say it's the weakest link for the organizations is the human is the weakest link. Because if you look at the recent survey and recent report, as a part of the CISO, I would always worry about the three more areas, and this is from the last 2 years survey. What are the threats that we should worry as a part of the organization? Uh, it's number one is 33% is the your email will get compromised. That's number one threats for the any organization. That's one number one link. Second one is that is the negligent or accidental something you done or somebody has done, clicking on the link or anything. And number two is also around 29%. And number three, is your DDoS attack and your cloud account compromisation. So these are three areas where it's all equal percentage. If you look at the 33, 29, 27% to major compromise organization goes into the, in categorized in three areas. There are other things are there, like, your malware attack and your ransomware attack, but it's significantly lower than these three. But these are the three weakest link that, organization should worry about it. And I would not say it's not, the picture is not looking rosy now, but it's pretty, uh, it's more research based required. And as I always have, working towards the exposure management. And I know I written a couple of articles, and if um, uh, couple of research article also, and then my website and my blog, where mainly important, focusing on the cyber security exposure management and the risk management of overall the organization. How do we better protect ourselves and organizational data, and the threat analysis? The more you are, uh, the equipped with the threat analysis, how the threats are coming and how do you analyze the threat, and then identify and mitigate it. That is called exposure management, cybersecurity exposure management. So there are various tools are there, techniques are there. You go into deep in each area, then you understand where you need to focus, as a part of your organization or individual. But overall, it's a cybersecurity risk exposure management where you can, put your focus together and then go from there.
And is that, and that's helpful. And I think, is that someplace that you would start is doing that assessment if you were coming into a project and looking at an organization's infrastructure and information management and all that?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
That's one of the starting point for, do the assessment for any organization to see where where they stand right now. How much is the gap in between, right? And from your whatever you're saying, how many exposure points are there, to, for the external parties to get into it? It's like closing the doors. How many doors are got closed already, or how many doors are open, right?
yeah,
You never know. So, do you have a tool? Do you have a, resources? Do you have a way to identify it, where it is coming or threat is coming from? No, then we have to put together the controls. So first establish the control, then
yeah.
you establish the tools, then protect the information, then see what legacy applications are there, see what is the hardware is there, see how do your people access the applications, what are the, exposures, where the exposures are going. And so that's the identification is the first area, first stage is to start with the security. So unless you identify where you are right now, it's really hard to put together. You can spend millions of dollars putting the new tools, right? But if you're not, and identified where the risk is for my business or our business, it's just hard to protect them.
And I think that's a really good analogy when you talk about how many doors and windows are open and trying to sort of secure your house, as it were. Um, I imagine one of the challenges in this space is what is probably a relative, a moving target, as it were, because the ecosystem, technology, ill doers and folks who are looking to do bad things, they don't stop and slow down, right? They are constantly evolving as technology evolves. So how in this space, how do you sort of bridge the gap, not just between where folks are, where they need to be, and where the market's going with these threats and risks, but I imagine as these risks are discovered or these vulnerabilities are discovered, this is not the matter of flipping a switch, right? This is oftentimes cultural change and adoption. How do you sort of navigate, understanding that there will be a time period in between the discovery of a threat and the ability for that organization to close the door on that threat?
So it's an ongoing process. It's not a one-time job. It's a continuous monitoring and management is required. So, uh, it's you close one door, but it always second door is always gets open by some way or other way. For example, there may be, you close all the doors, but there may be a database in your organization which is protected already as per the vendor. But your vendor after a couple of years discover that, okay, this was the weakest link that needs to close. So it's a continuous monitoring process. As we go along with it, it has to be developed continuously, monitor continuously, and that's why the 24 by 7 security operation centers are there. You have to watch and regularly patch your servers, your infrastructure, keep up to date, your legacy hardware, your legacy operating systems. Um, there are always debate in the uh, uh, what should we give preference, whether we should invest into hardware, invest into software, invest into security, right? It goes like that only. But yeah, I mean, so all the pieces are important. It's not like you can only invest in cybersecurity and not to invest into. You bring the tools, but all your infrastructure is not up to date. It can't protect you. It can only show you, okay, this is these are the things that is already you need to close it. But unless you go and invest in infrastructure. So there are various parts and elements are there. But as far as the information and cybersecurity goes, I think you can start with the putting the things together in a very basic way. And it doesn't to be a very high-fi, but if you have your infrastructure updated, more or less covered. The another area I would suggest, I would say the more awareness, the more employee aware of cybersecurity and the risk for every organization, the more you protect it. And ultimately, it's all human protection. So the more you protect, or the more you're aware of the organization. That's why reason we run the various employee awareness programs, cybersecurity awareness programs, where to click, where not to click. There are various attacks, right?
Yeah.
Phishing, wishing, and social engineering. Don't click on a link. You do that regularly. So the more you're aware, the more you protect yourself better.
And I'm a big analogy person. I appreciated your house analogy earlier. I guess the analogy here would be you can get the most sophisticated, high tech, expensive alarm system for your house, but if you forget to lock your door,
Yeah.
what's what good does it do? Um, when we talk about cloud solutions, SaaS technology, and we look at institutions tech stacks that we see sort of ebb and flow over time. They grow and then looking to reduce vendors and increase vendors. Is there a correlation between the number of different SaaS techs you have in your tech stack and the threat risk? Meaning the more apps you have plugged into your into your system, the more potential points of vulnerability there are.
Yeah, in some way it is, but
Okay.
if you look at the couple of new SaaS applications which has very built-in intelligence for security, um, and I would say these SaaS-based organizations are spending millions of dollars to protect that information because that's their core, right? Everything is going to store on cloud. Everything is you're not able to visible view all the data and the servers and infrastructure lying around it. So they are spending the money on it, but ultimately, yeah, it is a risk. Ultimately, you have a risk. You are putting the data in somebody else's hand, right? So there is always a risk, but you all also have to trust it in some or other way. It's not a matter of only for trusting, but there is also relation between your trust and how do you you know keep yourself also secure. So although I have trust on you, you keep this data secure, but if you do not have the controls and everything established, like for example, you have the Amazon, you store all your servers and everything there on Amazon, your data and everything, and they run pretty good security.
Yeah.
And yeah, because and they have all your reports and everything available for their SOC 2 report, SOC 1 report. If you want to go and see the physical data centers where data resides, and your all this one physical security also. Uh, they do that in a way to satisfy the organization that the perimeter security, your data center security is also is a part of the this thing. So they do that, but it's also for, because everything the SaaS, most of the SaaS applications, the more you host the SaaS application, the risk is always there. But all these, either you go Azure or you go, AWS. These are the majority two SaaS, cloud vendors where your SaaS application will get hosted. So risk is always there, but you also have to make sure that, you know, your entire architecture. You can't go and have 100 SaaS applications subscribe and sharing the data with the 100 SaaS applications. You should have an organization policy, how many applications we should, and whether it is necessary, what kind of data is getting shared, what kind of data is getting stored, for how long it will get stored into the cloud vendor or SaaS vendor, what is the process for deleting that data, who is accountable and who is responsible to manage and maintain that data. It's all
Yeah.
agreement, we never read the agreement for cloud agreement. We always click okay, right? So
Yeah.
that's how all the whole your data protection comes.
And that's a great point, and certainly somewhat scary. I don't know if you watch Black Mirror or not, but there was a whole episode of where someone signs up for a social media app and essentially signs off the rights to her life to this social media app, who then makes a television show about her, which was yeah, a bit unsettling. And I know this is an area where I've seen some exposure for things like accessibility, where you have a tech stack. Some of it's homegrown, some of it may not be. It's a combination of customized tech and SaaS tech and commoditized tech. And if there's a site that has accessibility issues, in that situation, the liability falls on, let's say, the merchant, not the third-party tech vendor who provided that plugin module. I'm curious, when it comes to security, cybersecurity, and liability for things like breaches and data security, when you have a tech stack of a variety of different vendors, who would bear the liability in the event of some kind of data breach?
So there is a term called data processor, data controller,
Okay.
right? And if you read the couple of GDPR articles, you will find that what is the exact meaning of the data controller, who is the data controller, who is the data processor,
Okay.
who controls the data, right? Who the controls the data, who has the more responsibility, right, to control the data, process the data. I'm processing your data means, I'm reading a data, I'm doing something with the data, I'm updating the data. That's a processor of the data, right? So whoever is the controlling the data, who has the custody of your data, is responsible for to manage and maintain your data securely, right? In the event of cyber security, in the event of hacking or anything, or compromise your data, ultimately who is the has the custody of the data is responsible for it. So your
Interesting.
organization, and that's one of the reasons that these controls got established, right? So let's say you build one SaaS application for hospitals, right, or the financial institution, right, and all the financial institution customer data routing through your application, right, or getting stored into your application, right, or your SaaS applications, or people are going to the application, putting their name and number and account number or social or anything, and then getting into the customer service or whatever it is. So you are actually holding the customer data. So that's one of the reasons that the PCI DSS controls got established, right? So for health organization, for PCI, PHI data, HIPAA is got established or introduced, right, to protect in a such a way. Still, we have a weakest link. If you still have a PCI DSS, still your data got leaked, and we have a couple of instances in the past also, right, where your data got leaked, your data, your entire infrastructure got ransomware, and you have demand. And last year also we had a couple of instances, major instances for solar winds, or for your There is a Conti ransomware last year. The entire Costa Rica um, government, introduced, they got all the websites and all everything got, encrypted there with the ransomware, right? So they declared the national emergency for it. So
Wow.
that's how it got serious. But yeah, I mean, whoever is the control the data has the authority or has the responsibility to manage and maintain that. And but to reduce the dependency or reduce the accountability, you should always go with the control, follow the control establishment. You cannot protect your organization 100% or the data 100%, because it's over the period of time there are stack of the application, as you say, multiple stack of the application got built, got accepted into the organization. You have to protect everything, and that's how the artificial intelligence AI tools got introduced to manage and monitor the threat analysis.
And I want to get into a bit about data protection and AI, but quickly, we are here on Tipping Point with Vaibhav Tare, the Chief Information Security Officer at Fulcrum Digital. Folks out there on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, if you have any questions along the way, this is a fascinating discussion for me. I'm learning a ton. If you have any questions, by all means, pop them in the comment section and we will get to them. So you mentioned data privacy. You've mentioned GDPR and CCPA. Did I have that right?
Yeah.
And then we'll get to some artificial intelligence pieces, because I think that it's, that's uppermost in a lot of people's minds. What do you see as the biggest challenge in rolling out and adhering to data privacy regulations regionally, globally, as the regulations change for organizations?
There are various aspects of the data privacy regulation. So everybody has a different definition in their own way. Um, I would say Europe has a stringent data privacy regulations compared to US and other countries. Um, the organization, so data privacy comes in a three layer. Number one is to your controls. Number two is your processes. And number three is your procedures, right? Um, that's how it got introduced, the data privacy and the protection. Um, but yeah, I mean, you can have different data protection laws, and if you look at US only, we have every state has its own data privacy
Okay.
protections, right? So CCPA is just one example, but for every New York has a different data privacy sets. Your Florida has a different one. Your uh, Illinois has a different data protection law. You have to, but there are a lot of. We do not have any federal data protection yet, but but it's in the process, couple of it, and they probably will get implemented and announced. But uh, there are uh, there are many things that needs to be done as a part of the data protection. There are still, we have a long way to go as a part of the data protection to include all the bits and pieces for your, not only the human, but because of your technology is growing so fast, you have to catch with every little element to protect that element, right? And that's how the your artificial intelligence will probably help to protect that. We used to do that as a part of the machine learning to analyze and analysis of the threats, but to really go forward with the AI, I still think we still have to wait couple of years to see actual result of the AI with the cybersecurity.
What I think about data privacy and my nebulous knowledge and understanding of how these regulations impact various organizations, I understand that there is an element of this which is giving consumers the right to be forgotten, or if you desire to have your data wiped from an organization's databases, you need to they need to allow you to do that. But as you noted, in a world in which you've got so many disparate data sources and a lot of organizations struggling with a source of truth for customer data or client data, um, you know, a lot of time, what do they say, necessity is the mother of all invention. People don't do things until they have to, or there's a problem. How are organizations tackling this issue of having customer data across so many different platforms that, they might get a request to delete their data that comes through, let's say, their e-commerce platform, right? So it gets deleted from, let's say it's Shopify or BigCommerce or Adobe or whatever it is. But then you've also got the customer data in the email platform, in a separate, in a reviews platform. How do folks wrap their head around not just being careful with the data that they have, but allowing for that material piece of these regulations, which is allowing consumers to inquire about what data what data that organization has, and the ability to remove their data from their systems.
So it's a part of your agreement when you give the consent to collect my data.
Yeah.
Right. Uh, because you have given the consent to, okay, collect my data, and you don't know, because the reason we don't read the agreements clearly, where you only give the consent to, okay, collect my data, but for how many platforms you use that data, whether you can sell my information, you cannot sell my information, right? I can collect your data, I can use your data, you can send a request, but there is also a clause that I can sell your information, I can send the information to other organizations, similar organizations, right? I already send the organization information that, okay, I you know um, use your data, and they can use it for your marketing purpose or any other purpose. And then later on, you send the information to me, delete my data. I deleted your data, but your data is still present in the other way, right?
Right.
So it's not only one area where you say, okay, my data got deleted. It's really hard to manage that now. Now in any application, you subscribe for 100 applications, where you going to control that? So
Yeah.
it's ultimately comes down to uh, to to manage. Responsibility comes down to you only to manage your data correctly, right? Not the other way around, because you already subscribe for many applications, you already given your consent to various organizations to do anything to my data. Right. um, so before anything signing to it, you should, and I think it's only matter where you actually required to subscribe. And I always encourage people to go and subscribe if only it is necessary. It
Yeah.
doesn't go and download any application whether you see, looking good, but you don't know what information is getting collected. Now Apple and some of the other companies started showing the information, what the information is getting collected if you download the application. But its ultimate decision is yours, that if you really wants that or not, because the number of application you go and download, everybody is collecting the same information from you. So it's very hard to control who will, how many times you're going to ask for to delete my data, and how many companies will adhere your request. That's also one way. But it's only applicable to country law. It's a law in Europe that you can request to delete the data. It's not in
Right.
you right now.
Oh, it's not. That's not a requirement in the U.S.
Yeah,
yet.
yeah, it's not.
Oh,
It's
only in.
CCPA has that one. Some controls that you can request to delete that one, but not all the states comply with that. So
And in the EU with GDPR, it is the European Union, if I'm not mistaken, who enforces that, and there's some pretty severe penalties, monetary penalties, for not being compliant. In the US, a lot of these things still, whether it's accessibility or data privacy, feel a little bit more like the Wild West, like there isn't anyone really policing it, and folks have sort of individual claims, but that's
Yeah,
done.
the reason behind is because of the you know federal implementation of the centralized privacy protection laws.
Right,
Like the GDPR, it's a countrywide. Europe completely accepted the GDPR protection. You can't just go and have your CCTV cameras and mm,
right,
back on your house, and you have to put the notice there. You and whatever the area you're going to cover, because somebody else will go and sue you. And there are a couple of lot of cases happens. If you go to the there you can watch this cases, how many CCTV cameras owner got sued
wow,
uh,
because the coverage.
because of the unnecessary coverage of the CCTV.
Wow,
So
that's interesting.
that so these are the stringent couple of things in Europe that is implemented. I hope Europe will also follow the same, but it takes
Yeah.
time.
So this has been extremely interesting and educational for me, and I hope for the folks in the audience as well. We are in the home stretch where I ask some lightning round questions. There are a couple that are very pertinent to this conversation that I decided to ask. One is, um, how many characters do you make your passwords when you create your own passwords? Do you go really long on your passwords, or is 12 the standard? Or you don't want to disclose that?
No, it's not rocket science. I can um, it's I generally try to do that at 18 characters.
18 characters. Okay.
It is
Well,
very
I think if that's what you do, that's what I'm going to do. And are these password generators effective out there on the market? If you, or, online, you can do a password generator. A lot of these applications have built-in
yes,
password
yeah,
generators. You recommend those?
yes. These are effective one, but you can take those password and change it, and add one or two characters into it, so that will be uh, more protection.
How many, and I imagine, and I shouldn't make an assumption, but do you read the terms and conditions when you accept upgrades and updates to applications that you personally use?
I do.
You do. Okay.
Yeah,
And
most of the time, it's not
all right.
100%, but most of the time I do it.
I suspect that you have a lot fewer apps on your phone than the general public does. That you are very selective about what you download to your phone.
I don't download anything from the app store unless it is only banking applications, or
Okay,
yeah,
interesting.
whether
Uh,
it is required for my business. Otherwise, we don't. I personally don't download anything for your running app, your gym app, your yoga app. No,
you don't.
no, you have your own in phone. You can use it for your you can't use everything. There is an app for it, right? You can't use everything for your daily task for app. It is good to
I
have it.
mean, we are generally, I think, so reckless as individuals with where we're willing to share our personal data. At least across the internet, it's pretty wild. I don't think any of us really think about it day to day until or unless there's a some kind of breach or identity theft, where or compromise of an account. But it is really scary, the threats that are out there. And then a couple personal quick questions. You travel a lot. You have traveled a lot in your 30 years in this industry, certainly. What is your favorite airline to travel?
It's hard to, but I love Emirates.
Emirates.
Yeah,
Okay.
and but I travel a lot in United and Lufthansa.
United's actually, I've become a big fan of United. Actually, it's now that I live in Charleston, there's a hub here, and so a lot of times originally I was sort of forced to use United, but I think they have certainly improved over the past 20 years. I remember when I was very uncomfortable flying with them, and now I actually love them. Um, but not a plug for United. And then when it comes to recreation, TV shows, streaming, what are I imagine that you do subscribe to things like Netflix or Amazon Prime or otherwise.
I do have, yeah. Amazon
What
Prime. Yeah.
what TV shows are your sort of guilty pleasures? What shows do you like to watch? What series?
Oh, my favorite TV shows?
Yeah,
Breaking Bad.
Breaking Bad. Okay. Do you isn't there also a spin-off, Better Call Saul? Isn't that a spin-off of Breaking Bad? With
Yeah.
all right, Breaking Bad. Interesting. I would not have guessed that. It is a good show.
Yeah.
All right, Vaibhav, really appreciate you joining us. For all the folks who joined us and along the way, I hope this was as educational for you as it was for me. For the folks across Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, thanks for joining. We are streaming out recorded sessions across Spotify now as well. So this is also in podcast form and also available on our website and across our social media. Huge thanks to the folks who made this possible and helped set this up. Preeti and Aaron, as always, week to week, thank you for your support and helping execute this. Vaibhav, thanks so much for joining. Appreciate you and looking forward to chatting more.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Have a great rest of the day.
You too. Thanks.